My name is Elena Van Tassel, and I am the Executive Director of the Office of Economic Empowerment and a Deputy Treasurer. I'll be moderating today's event. We have a full program ahead for you. All right, you see the agenda on the screen. We're going to start with welcome remarks from our State Treasurer, Deborah Goldberg, followed by remarks from Senator Ed Markey and MEFA's Executive Director, Tom Graf. Then we'll go through our frequently asked questions with two of MEFA's resident savings experts, Jonathan and Julie. Feel free to use the Q&A function throughout the program, and we'll be sure to get to your questions later on. But first, before we get into the agenda, just a little housekeeping. This is a Zoom webinar and will be recorded and may be uploaded onto a website or Facebook for future use. Any questions asked through the Q&A function will be anonymous. However, the chat function is subject to public records law and as such is anonymous. Please be sure to complete the survey after the event so that we can continue offering quality events. All right, so it's a little bit about OEE. Today's event and the BabySteps Savings Plan is hosted by the Office of Economic Empowerment. You can learn more about OEE by visiting our website, which you can find in the chat. I will now turn it over to State Treasurer Deborah Goldberg to kick off our event.
Hey, everyone. I really want to thank you for joining us today to learn more about our BabySteps Savings Plan. As you can imagine, it's been a very important process for me to get this plan up and running. And Elena and all her folks have been with me in this since the very beginning, as has MEFA. And we have the Executive Director, Tom Graf, with us today, and folks from his office. And I'm especially excited because we are celebrating National Family Literacy Day today, which really incorporates educating people and also giving them financial education. And we do both of those things through our program. It's also National Adoption Month, which touches my life and my family's life personally, but I want to mention it because this program, Baby Steps, doesn't just apply to biologically born babies with families here in Massachusetts, but to babies adopted by families here in Massachusetts, which is equally as important. I'm really excited to thank Senator Ed Markey, someone who I've been friendly with, and I don't even want to say the number of years because it goes way back to when we were both unmarried, both of us. And my father introduced us and we became friends at that time. And we have a special video message from him. And I want to thank Lisa McClure from his office, who will be introducing his video in a few minutes. With a lot of work and pilots, in 2020, January 2020, we set out to establish the BabySteps Savings Plan as it is today, specifically designed for post-secondary education and vocational training. We looked through Mass School Building Authority, which is under my office, at the kind of jobs that are absolutely available here in Massachusetts and what their requirements are. And we found it needed a post-secondary education. What we know is savings accounts started at an early age, that children are 30% more likely to attend higher education institutions than those who have not begun saving. So by signing up with a MEFA U-Fund 529 account through this plan, families receive a $50 seeded account. And since we launched the program, over 20,000 families have created these accounts, which, considering what else was going on in 2020, meaning COVID, and the fact that I was not able to travel all over the state talking about this program and encouraging people to sign up, is pretty darn good. And compared to other like programs in the country, it's pretty amazing. I want to thank donors who've supported us, like the Hildreth Stewart Charitable Foundation and MEFA. MEFA has really put themselves out there on this program by supporting us. And we have received over $1 million through the free $50 seed deposits. It's an amazing milestone, and I'm thrilled that so many families have taken this step. Later in the webinar, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of experts at MEFA, and I encourage you to use this webinar as a way to learn more about the program. Ask any question. No question is a stupid one. I always say to people, a question is a question. It's never stupid if you have one. So be sure and ask whatever you need to know. And also, I just have to say that putting aspirations and putting your child and your family on the first step towards a life of education and success means a great deal to all of us and why we do our work. So before we hear from our friends in MEFA, I'm so glad to share a message from our United States Senator, Ed Markey, for Baby Steps families and partners. And I want to thank his team again for being here with us today. Your collaboration helps families grow their aspirations. So Elena, I will turn it back to you to introduce Lisa and the Senator's message. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Treasurer. We now have a special message from Senator Markey's office. Lisa McClure from his team will introduce that message, and we will put the contact information for the Senator's office into the chat in case you have any questions for his team. Lisa?
Lisa, you're on mute.
Excuse me. Unfortunately, the senator couldn't be here today, but on behalf of our office, thank you, Treasurer Goldberg and the Office of Economic Empowerment for putting together this forum. And now, as everybody said, we're glad to share some remarks from Senator Markey.
Hello, I'm Senator Ed Markey, and I'm so honored to speak with you about the Baby Steps Savings Plan. With Baby Steps, we can take a giant leap forward for America's next generation of big thinkers, creative masterminds, and great leaders in our country. Education is the key to a strong middle class, but the exorbitant cost of a good education has weighed down so many families who are climbing the mountain to education and economic security. I was the first in my family to go to college. I drove an ice cream truck. I lived at home, commuted to classes, took out loans to pay for my college and law degree. Since then, education has only become more expensive. But the Baby Steps Plan puts children across Massachusetts on a sure-footed path to pursuing their highest aspirations. What could be more important? Well, Baby Steps supports families that are saving for K-12, vocational school, apprenticeships, and student loan repayment. With Baby Steps, children can get $50 in a savings fund with a 1 year after birth or adoption. Programs like this will help us close the racial wealth gap and plant the seeds for future success. Already, Baby Steps deposited $50 to over 20,000 Massachusetts families. That is $1 million in savings for our children's future and 20,000 future leaders and innovators who will have a smoother path to their educational success. This is a very, very important program. Thank you for having me. Hello, I'm Senator Ed.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Lisa. And now I will turn it over to
Before you do,
Next generation.
I have to tell you something. I thank the senator. He really captured the passion that's put into this program. So Lisa, be sure and tell him he totally gets it, and we're going to be sure to have him do things with us again.
Absolutely will.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you, Senator. And again, thank you, Lisa. And now I'll turn it over to the Executive Director of MEFA before I launch into our Q&A. Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Elena. And thank you to Senator Markey and Treasurer Goldberg. It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon to talk about the importance of saving for college. And I want to particularly thank the Treasurer for her leadership on helping us and working with us to establish Baby Steps. And over the course of time, you've heard we've been able to reach more and more families and children. And you know, even though we're, you know, just short of 3 years into this, it's really becoming quite a success. So thank her for approaching us a number of years ago. And, you know, the program really fulfills the goals that you know, that we established some time ago. So thank you for her and her team that have worked very closely with us.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, for over 20 years, we at MEFA have spoken about the value of saving for college. And currently we have over 250,000 accounts that have been opened and over 7 billion in savings of those Massachusetts families. And over that time, an additional 6.8 billion was saved and ultimately used to pay for school. So really a success story and being enhanced with the Baby Steps program. As the Senator and Treasurer have said, Massachusetts families have the added advantage of the Baby Steps program to kick off their college savings. With the incentive of $50 into that plan opened in the first year of your birth or adoption, the Commonwealth program encourages families to start saving early in the child's life. The U Fund provides a great foundation for families to save for college beginning early, which allows those savings to grow over time. And when used for qualified education expenses, the investment earnings grow tax-free. An additional benefit in the Commonwealth is the Massachusetts state tax deduction incentive, $1,000 for single filers and $2,000 for those married filing jointly. U Fund investments may be used for a wide range of post-secondary expenses, including colleges, universities, and technical programs. Even if families can't save it all, which most cannot, families will see tremendous momentum in their savings by sticking to a plan and making sure they contribute regularly. Families who save will have the resources and options available to them when it comes time to send their children to college, and will also minimize the amount of borrowing they otherwise may have to do. The U Fund is managed online and making it easier to open accounts and start savings, as well inviting family and friends to contribute. As we head into the holiday season, we encourage parents to suggest some money intended for traditional tangible gifts may instead be contributed to a college savings plan, a valuable gift that will keep on giving for a lifetime. According to MEFA and Fidelity research done this year, over half of Massachusetts residents have opened a 529 college savings account. And over 86% of parents are saving in some college vehicle. We strongly encourage more families to open a U Fund account and save what they can, when they can. And with the Baby Steps program, as the treasurer noted, over 20,000 accounts have been opened for Massachusetts babies born since 2020. As a reminder, families do not need to go through this process alone. MEFA, Fidelity, and the Office of Economic Empowerment are here to help answer questions and provide you with the resources to help kick your college savings journey. MEFA college planning experts work with families and students across the Commonwealth every day, families just like yours. We encourage you to reach out to us or the Office of Economic Empowerment to help work with you to create your plan and savings goals. I am joined today by two of MEFA's college planning and saving experts, Julie Shields-Ratina and Jonathan Hughes, who will give you an overview how the program is run and be glad to answer any questions you might have. So again, thanks to Elena and the treasurer. And we encourage people, if they have questions, even after the session ends today, to reach out to us or Elena's team and work with us. And we're glad to spend as much time as you need. So thank you, Elena. Thank you, treasurer.
Thank you, Tom. So, and again, thank you so much for MEFA's tremendous partnership with this program. So we're going to dive right in, and we're going to start it off with a poll. Let's find out who is here in the audience. Poll should be coming up. Yes. So how would you describe yourself? If you can respond to the poll, that would be great. And while the audience is answering the question, I'd love to hear from the college savings experts that Tom referenced, Julie and Jonathan. Julie or Jonathan, can you tell us exactly what the Baby Steps plan is and how MEFA is involved?
Sure. Hi.
I'm muted and you still knew what I was saying. Yes. Do you want to take it?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So as mentioned by the treasurer, by Tom Graf, the Baby Steps program is a $50 seed deposit that provides families a way to open a U-Fund college savings account and begin saving for their child. And so the account needs to be opened within the first year of a child's birth or adoption. And then the family can continue saving for post-secondary education, including vocational training.
Thank you, Julie. And now we have the, and also too, thanks, Julie, for that answer. And here are also the results of the question. We have a number of parents of new child. We have some expecting parents, people that are interested in both baby steps in a 529 account. Some families are already saving in a 529 account, which is great. We also have some of our tremendous partners on here and community organizations. Some people have just now starting to hear about baby steps or 529 accounts. So we're thrilled to have such a diverse group here with us today. So Julie, you use the term account owner. Who is the actual owner of the account when the families open up the 529 account, and who's the beneficiary?
Yes, that's a great question. So the account owner is many times the parent, and that person remains the account owner, and the beneficiary is the child. However, it can be another adult that can be the account owner, and then the child, the beneficiary.
Okay, thanks, Julie. And Jonathan, I haven't forgotten about you, so I'm going to ask you the next question. We get questions from OEE. We get the question all the time. What's the difference between an individual and a custodial account? Can you describe the difference?
Sure. So an individual account is an account in which the owner, who we've just mentioned, is often the parent, but doesn't have to be. The owner is the person who controls the account, so it can take funds out of the account, et cetera. That owner in an individual account remains the owner and in control of the account for the entirety of the account. So if you are going to be opening up a 529, a U-Fund 529 with the expectation of getting the $50 seed for baby steps, you'd need to pick that individual account. It's the first question that most people that you see on the application, and it's probably confusing to most people. They're going to say individual or custodial. What is that? If you're looking for baby steps, you want to pick individual. A custodial account is essentially if you have another type of an account, like a UGMA or UTMA account, which is uniform gift to minors, uniform trust to minors. These are accounts that sometimes have been previously set up, and people want to sort of roll them into a 529, which you can do, but in that case, that would be a custodial account, and that minor or that person who the gift was for would assume control at some point during the account.
Thank you, Julie. We got our first question from an audience member. It's in the Q&A. I'm just going to remind everybody, please feel free to use the Q&A to ask any baby steps or savings questions. So Julie, what if a family isn't able to deposit any additional funds beyond the $50 seed deposit?
Yes, and we get that question often. So that's fine, because we know that over the course of our lifetime, sometimes we have a little extra cash on hand, sometimes we don't. And so I think the most important thing is to have the account opened, which that's what's so wonderful about Baby Steps, just opening that account with the seed deposit. And then if there are points in your life where you can add money, a couple that we sometimes think about are maybe daycare expenses stop at some point when a child goes to kindergarten, or maybe at some point you receive a raise or something like that. Then that's a point where you can say, oh, I'm going to put a little bit of that money into this account. And so again, there are times that you can save automatically and consistently, and times that you might not save at all. But having that account open makes it nice and easy if you do have funds to just put it right in there.
Great. Thanks, Julie. And Jonathan, go back to you for the next question. We also get a lot of questions about beneficiaries and successor owners. What is a successor owner?
Yeah, a successor owner is someone that the owner can add to the account that can take over the account in the unfortunate event that something were to happen to the owner. So a lot of times people think, well, there's a beneficiary on the account. So if God forbid anything happens to me and I pass away, then that beneficiary will just become the owner of the account. But That's not the case typically. The owner needs to be 18 years of age in order to take over an account. So if you're opening an account for someone who's not yet 1 year old, that person is not going to be a good successor on the account. So, this is where typically if there's a spouse, the spouse will be added as a successor owner. If there was somebody else, like a family member or a friend, you could add that person. And again, they could easily assume control of the account if anything were to happen to the owner. Also, when you're setting up the account, this is a step that you can skip and add later. So I know a lot of times people are opening up an account, they have the social security information for themselves and their child, but they don't necessarily have it for the person who they haven't thought of yet. Maybe they want to be the successor owner. So you can always call later on and add a successor owner if you don't have all that information at the time of opening the account.
Thanks, Jonathan. We're starting to get some more questions from the audience. Julie, what is the average monthly contribution families typically make to a 529 account? Is there an average?
Yeah, actually, I don't know the exact answer to that. But I will say it varies greatly. There are some families who have a very small consistent amount that goes in, which is still helpful no matter how small, to save consistently, because it is sort of that consistency and time that can have a big effect. And then other families may actually have a good amount of money in their budget to add consistently. But I guess the important thing I'd want to say here is there doesn't have to be an exact amount. It's whatever you can save, then will be helpful in your whole planning process.
Great. That's such a great message, Julie. It's really what you can do. So thank you. All right. And Jonathan, I'm going to bring out and ask the next question from the audience. Our daycare cost just ended. I'm not sure how much to start contributing for each of my 3 kids, ages 13, 8, and 5. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, this is sort of piggybacking on Julie's answer, just whatever you can. I'll be honest, when I first started contributing to my son's U Fund account, I was doing the minimum that I could at the time, which was $15 a month, automatically withdrawn. And so this is something that, I was thinking of when Julie was giving her answer. We talk about it all the time in our presentations. It doesn't matter the amount that you have saved. Simply knowing, if a child knows that money is set aside for him or her, they're much more likely to go to college and to graduate. The other thing I'll say is, using automatic withdrawal, we know that people who do that typically end up saving more. So I think, this is a perfect time to assess what you can do. I remember when my son left daycare and went to kindergarten. I don't know where that money went now, but I'm sure some of it was the 529s. But yeah, I think anything you can do is a good thing. And there are, it's ultimately going to be up to you, but there may be some tools that you can use to figure that out as well, that we may have some on the MEFA website. So a college cost calculator and a savings calculator that you could use.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Sure.
Julie, this is a question we get, I've heard more times than I can count. So it's a good question from the audience. If my child decides not to attend college, can I still withdraw the funds with no penalty?
Yes. So if your child decides not to attend, you have a number of options. One thing that you can do is just see what their other post-secondary plans are, because actually there are other programs, vocational training that may qualify. So that might be one first step to look at. Second, you can actually change the beneficiary. So if you have another child or even another relative of your child, you can change the beneficiary and let them be the beneficiary of this account. So that's another great option. Let's say a third piece I'd say is maybe the child isn't going right away, but they might go in a couple of years. there's no harm in leaving the money in the account. It's not going to expire, and seeing if they choose to go in a year or so. But if all of that, none of that really works out and you want to take the money out, you can absolutely take the money out. But you will pay income taxes on any interest that was earned, and you will pay a 10% penalty tax on any interest that was earned on the account by not using the money for a qualified expense. But you can absolutely take your money back, just knowing those two penalties.
Thank you, Julie. And we have another question from the audience. I'm going to send this one over to Jonathan. Can each child in the family receive the $50 seed, one child born in 2020 and another child born in 2022?
Sure, as long as each child is eligible. So it goes by the child. If the $50 is set aside for each child born or adopted in Massachusetts, and they can open the account within 1 year. So if they meet those requirements, then they are eligible. It's not limited to one per family, it's per child. So yeah, they can do that.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. And Julie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think you somewhat mentioned this in one of the questions earlier, but does the account owner have to be the beneficiary's parents? Can somebody else open up an account for a child?
Right. Yes. And someone else can open the account for a child. So, most often I'd say it's probably the parent, but many times it could be a grandparent or other relative or friend. Yes.
Right. And what happens, and actually, Julie, you'll follow up. What happens if you don't have the beneficiary owner's social security number?
Yes. Well, you do need the beneficiary social security. No, you need a social security to open the account. So if you don't have that, you could wait until you have that for the child. But if not, the parent or other person can open it in their own and be both the account owner and the beneficiary themselves using their own social security number, and then just go in and change that at a later point.
Right. So then, okay, that's good. So you can change the beneficiary, and you somewhat answered that in the earlier question too.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Julie. All right, Jonathan, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Now, this might be the most common question that we get. What if you don't know anything about investing? When you get to that investment question, when you open up the 529, what option do you pick?
Sure. Well, don't ask me. That's the first thing you should do. And then, but this is where our relationship with Fidelity comes into it, right? So, and we know we've sat with families who have opened up accounts before and gone through the process, and we get to this point where they have to answer some investment questions, and there are, I think, 2 investment questions that people have to answer. And most people are like me and don't really know anything about investments, so they get a little nervous at that point. And what they should do is talk to Fidelity and we have contracted with Fidelity to service the accounts for the youth fund in general, and to do the customer service. They've also been trained specifically on baby steps. And so they're aware of the BabySteps program and the kind of program it is, and that we're trying to reach people who maybe aren't used to investing. And so they are able to counsel people, just ask them a few questions, see how comfortable they are with certain investments, and based on their answers, sort of guide them through and pick the investments that may be best option for them. If for whatever reason, maybe they can't get in touch with Fidelity. Fidelity is open, I think, 8 a.m. through 7 p.m. every day to call. But if they can't get to them, or if they change their mind later on, you can go back and change your investment option as well after receiving some guidance, or if you have a change of heart. So nothing is set in stone when you're first filling out the application. That's important to know. And then that's the first thing. The second thing is reach out to the professionals who are Fidelity.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. That's really good advice about reaching out to Fidelity. Thank you. Julie, we keep hearing about the fluctuations in the market, on the news. We see it in the, pretty much every night on the evening news. Is there a danger that the account holder will lose money in the account?
Yeah, I know, something people are thinking about of late. So any type of investment does carry some risk. So here's where Fidelity comes in again, because again, they are the experts with all of this. And so the nice thing about the U Fund account is there are lots of choices in how a family can decide to invest their money. And there's one that is FDIC insured. So that means that if you choose that one, then you won't lose money. But there could be a downside to that, where that's a very conservative investment and may not also earn as much interest in good times. So that's one example. And that's why the Fidelity folks, who are the experts on this, can talk with a family and ask about, what is your risk tolerance? How long do you have to save? Do you mind if your account fluctuates greatly in the early years, or would you like something safer? And so they will really talk with a family and help the family decide on a choice. I will mention too that a high number, I think it's 80% of people who open a U Fund account make one of the choices that's called an age-based account, which is an account that is a little more risky in the early years. So when the child is very young, but then as the child gets older and closer to college age, it gets a little more conservative, so that there's hopefully less fluctuation at that point. And so that's an option that families can talk with Fidelity about, is choosing that will go from riskier in the young years to more conservative in the older years.
Thank you, Julie. That's really helpful. Jonathan, we got another question from the audience. This is another question we often get. Does the child have to attend a school in Massachusetts?
No, that's a good question. So just because this is the Massachusetts 529 plan, it doesn't mean that you have to attend a school in Massachusetts. In fact, as was alluded to before, it doesn't even have to be a college per se, as long as it's a institution. You can use it for career training or vocational programs, as long as the institution itself is eligible to take U.S. federal funds. And the same goes for international colleges too. If an international college is set up to take U.S. federal funds, you can use your 529, the U Fund money for expenses related to that as well, and still retain that tax benefit. So no, it does not have to be a college in Massachusetts.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, Julie, I'm going to turn it back over to you now. I'm going to switch gears, but I know we've kind of touched upon this in a couple questions, but how do you recommend somebody save in their account? Like, do you have some tips or how to approach this?
Yeah. I think, one of the big things we say to families is to start early. And so that another reason Baby Steps is such a great program, starting within the first year is great, because then you have a lot of time for that savings to grow. So that's a huge tip. Start early. Another thing is, if you can, and I already alluded to the fact that sometimes you can't, but if and when you can, setting up an automatic withdrawal can be very helpful, even if it's a small amount, because then that's a decision you don't have to make every month. It's just something that automatically gets saved, and hopefully most people report they don't even miss whatever that amount is, and then that's saving automatically. And we do know from seeing the accounts that people who are able to do that end up saving more. And then the third thing I'd say is, if you ever do receive a little extra money, because a family situation changes with the daycare to kindergarten example, or because you get a raise or a tax credit or birthday money, things like that. If you can take some of that and add that to the account at that time, that's a really helpful step. And then maybe the one I like the best is to involve other people in the savings. So especially, let's say, birthday or holiday time, to be able to say to friends and relatives, it would be terrific, rather than another 10 by 10 plastic toy, would be a small donation to my child's college savings account. And I know sometimes grandparents or aunts and uncles maybe like to still buy a little toy, but maybe balance that with money going into the savings account. So the more people you can involve in that, I think the better. And I think everyone feels great about helping the child save for college.
I always think that would be a good gift for the parents too. Like, never mind the child, give it for the parent. But yeah, I know I would love to receive it personally. So, but yeah.
True.
All right, Jonathan, we got another question from the audience. Is the money that the family adds to the 529 account tax-free?
So no, the money is not pre-tax, so it will be a post-tax contribution to your 529. There is an income tax deduction that you can claim in Massachusetts. So if you pay Massachusetts taxes and you're contributing to your U fund, you can deduct up to $2,000. For married filers filing jointly, you can deduct up to $2,000 of your contributions to your U fund. For individual filers, it's up to $1,000. But the money itself is not tax-free or pre-tax. It would be post-tax.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, Julie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. We often hear the term compound interest. Can you tell us about that and what that often means?
Yes. So compound interest is a way that you can make your money work for you. So basically what it means is, when you put money into an account, when you invest money and it earns interest, then each time after that, you earn interest on the interest. So that is just a way of making your money grow faster, because every time you earn interest, then that's your total sum of money, and you earn interest on that. So you keep earning interest on higher amounts of money. And I've heard financial folks call it, one of the 7 wonders of the world or something, compound interest.
I haven't heard that, but I'm going to start using that. Okay, so this now brings us to our next poll question. Jonathan, do you want to maybe explain the question, and then we'll bring up the poll?
Oh, sure. So this is going to show, well, we'll see what it shows, but it speaks to the question of compound interest and starting early as well. So in our example here, Julie saves $50 per month in a 529 plan that she opened when her child was first born. So she was a BabySteps account. And now I started saving $100 per month when my child was in the 2nd grade, and I was a little bit behind. So I thought I'd better double my efforts, see if I can catch up. So who is going to have more money saved when our children turn 18?
All right, so the poll question is before you. Will Julie or Jonathan have more money saved when their child turns 18? So I'll give you another minute. Keep in mind, you can still ask questions in the Q&A. This has been, tremendously helpful having these conversations. So, all right, we're going to give everybody another minute. All right, so looks like, does one of you want to give the answer? Julie, since, you were the overwhelming answer, want to give the answer?
Yes. So the answer is that Julie would have more money. And hey, that tells me people are really paying attention, because as you can see, the key here is time. I always find this a little bit interesting, because, here's Jonathan starting and saving double, $100 a month, but waiting till 2nd grade versus firstborn makes a big difference. So the way it works is that in this example, from saving $50 a month from the beginning, I would have $21,536 saved, and that's $10,800 that I contributed and $10,736 that I have earned in interest. So that's huge. And then Jonathan did a great job and then saved $19,798, contributing $13,200 and earning interest of $6,500. So again, I guess we can't say it enough that really starting early and having the time can really increase your earnings.
Yeah. Thank you, Julie. I know you guys have been saying that for this entire program, but that really, quantifies it. All right, I'm going to turn it now back over to Jonathan. We've talked a little bit about this, but what are the penalties for taking money out for things other than the qualified educational expenses?
Yeah, so can I talk about what the qualified educational expenses are first, and then yeah, I don't know if we're going to get to that later, but I will. Qualified educational expenses are things like tuition fees, room and board, books, supplies, equipment at higher education institutions. Of course, there have been some expansions, so it's now up to $10,000 yearly from K through 12 tuition. Same for apprenticeships, and a one-time $10,000 student loan payment. So those are the eligible expenses for your 529s. Now, if you have to withdraw and you have to use those funds for ineligible expense, then there are penalties associated with it. And those penalties are, as Julie explained, that there's a 10% penalty on the earnings. It's important to note that all the penalties are assessed on the earnings, not what you put in, but the earnings. So there's a 10% penalty on the earnings. And then there's the earnings will also be taxed at the owner's rate of income. There are 3 exceptions to the 10% penalty. And those are death and disability of the student, which obviously we don't want to contemplate. And then the third, though, is scholarship. So if your student is awarded a scholarship and has to use funds, 529 funds, but can't use them that way because of a scholarship, then that 10% penalty is not assessed on that scholarship amount. However, even in those examples, the earnings will all be taxed at the owner's rate of income. So that is the penalty that is associated with withdrawals for ineligible expenses.
Thank you, Jonathan. And then Julie, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And this is, again, another question we frequently hear at OEE. What are the impacts of baby steps and other 529 accounts on financial aid for college?
Yes. So, because we work in an organization that helps students apply for financial aid and think about all the ways they're going to be able to pay for college, we always hear people say to us, well, you're telling us to save, but isn't that going to mean I don't get financial aid? Or is that going to hurt my chances of getting financial aid? And at MEFA, we call it our #1 myth that we need to break, in that really your saving is going to help you so much more than it would hurt you in any way. And the reason for that is that when students apply for financial aid and families apply for financial aid, the biggest driver of the calculation that determines how much financial aid they will receive is income, and parent income specifically, but can even be student income, versus assets or savings. So savings are treated in a very, very reasonable way. And therefore, and at MEFA, we have all kinds of calculators to help you see that. And we can talk with you more about that. But the bottom line is that your savings is going to be a huge help to you when you're thinking about how you're going to pay for college, and has only a minimal effect on the financial aid that you will receive.
Great. That's really helpful to hear that, Julie. Thank you. And Jonathan, what are the impacts of savings on public benefits?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah.
I think we do have a slide to help with this question.
Yes, and I'm glad we do, because I'm not an expert on public benefits, but the question does come up, and there are all sorts of public benefits at different levels: federal, state, municipal. And if you have questions on specific benefits and whether or not 529s would impact those, then you should reach out to whoever provides that. But as you can see here, there is a list of means tested benefits, whether that's SNAP benefits, nutrition, WIC benefits, and how 529s sort of impact those. So you can see that there's no asset limit for the majority of these, or they're exempt for the majority of these benefits: healthcare, CHIP, mass health, housing. Well, there is and there are some like Medicare and I think the earned income tax credit, you may run into some limits there. But in general, for the vast majority of public benefits, 529, money saved in 529 should not impact those to a great deal.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. I know there's a lot of information on the screen. There is a link in the chat function for anybody that wants to access this and be able to refer to this at a later time, because I know there was a lot of information on the public benefits. And Julie, again, this is a question we often hear. What happens if the family decides to move outside of Massachusetts? Do they get to keep the BabySteps account?
Yes. So the nice thing about 529 plans in general is that you can keep your account in one state, no matter where you live, no matter what other state you live in. So you can keep your account and there's no residency requirement there, just as people in other states can open a 529 plan in Massachusetts. So that works fine. And then if someone does move, they would have the option to just leave the money in the Massachusetts U Fund, or they could transfer it to their own state's 529 plan, and there's no penalty there whatsoever.
Great. Thank you, Julie. And Jonathan, what is the ABLE account? We often talk about those when we're talking about baby steps. Could you talk about those?
Yeah, I'd love to. So an ABLE account is a different type of 529 account. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And how it works is similar to a 529 for education, like the one we've been talking about. You put money in, it's invested in the market, grows without taxes. And when you withdraw it, as long as you use it for qualified expenses, you pay no taxes on the earnings. And so the difference is that instead of being designed to use for higher education, it's designed to use for individuals with disabilities and the costs related to those. So the expenses, the eligible expenses are very, very wide. You can use them for education. You could use it for medical expenses, for technology, for housing, for basic living expenses. And so the reason that we like to talk about it with baby steps in particular is that there is a rollover that you can perform from a 529 to a 529A or ABLE. So from a U Fund to the Massachusetts ABLE plan, which MEFA also administers with Fidelity, is called Attainable. So you could transfer those over. And so, just to be inclusive and just to know that if you do have a child with special needs or disability that you want to save for, you can still absolutely take advantage of baby steps and then transfer the funds over, roll over to a 529A or Attainable plan. So that plan is newer. It's about 5 years old, and we are very happy with the success of it and want to keep promoting that. So thank you for asking.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. If anybody wants more information about the ABLE accounts, there is a link in the chat, so you can access that. We have no more questions from the audience. So Julie and Jonathan, do you have any remaining words of wisdom for families thinking about saving for higher education, thinking about opening up a baby step savings plan?
Well, I guess I would just say I've been working in this field for a long time, and I have never heard a parent say, they wish they hadn't saved. In fact, everyone always says, I wish I saved even a little bit more. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity to, open this account and to save whenever you can. And then just to know you have a lot of resources and help with our two offices, financial literacy, planning for college, all of that along the way. And we'll be so happy to talk with you anytime.
I would just say, and when my son was born, I remember talking to Julie about can I really afford this? So we did. So she said, yes. The best thing I did was start to save. I didn't save as early as I should have, but I started to save, and it is possible. So thank you, Julie. And what I would say then is, I think I always tell this story too when I'm talking about savings. When my son was born, I had my colleague said, let's see how much college is going to be for him when he turns 18. You know, we picked probably a 4-year private college in New England that was a really high sticker price. And then I had that immediate reaction of, there's no way I can save that amount. And I probably can't, you know, but I know I'm not going to have to. So this is the thing, there's financial aid available for just about every, most families are going to be eligible for some level of financial aid. You don't have to assume that you have to save this entire cost. And you also don't have to assume that you have to like take on the mental load of paying for college in its entirety right now. You know, I think a lot of people sort of want to say, well, that's not for now, I'm going to deal with that later. But if you do a little bit now and a little bit throughout, you know, the years, and if you can get a automatic withdrawal, if you can get family and friends involved and chip away little by little, it's going to be a lot more manageable by the time you get there. So I think that's really the important thing. Just starting it now doesn't mean you have to figure it all out right now.
All right, Julie and Jonathan, thank you both for those words of wisdom and those tips. We did actually get a few more questions come in, and so we do have some time before the 1 o'clock hour. Sorry, the 1:30 at 1:30. I apologize. I'm going to just, Jonathan, I'll start with you. Can the 529 be used for sport-focused education, maybe a ski school or golf school? Are there any? Is that a qualified expense?
I would, you know, I would think not. It would depend on the institution itself, whether or not the institution was eligible to receive U.S. federal funding as accredited. But you'd want to check with the institution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Julie, I'm going to give you the last question. If my children are already in middle school, do they still qualify for baby steps? And if they don't qualify, do you have any advice?
Sure. Yes, because they're in middle school, they're probably not eligible for the BabySteps $50. However, they are eligible for a UFund college investing plan. So you just won't have that $50. That is a nice boost to get you started. But now that you've sat with us, you know how important this is. You can just go and open these accounts for them. And not only do we say never too early, we always say never too late. And middle school is fine. You will be surprised at how much you can save in these remaining years.
Yeah, that's great advice, Julie. Thank you. Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Jonathan. If anybody wants to get in touch with you after this event, how can they do that?
Yeah, I would say collegeplanning@mefa.org is probably a great email that you can email, or just if you go to mefa.org, the website, all of MEFA's resources are there. You can sign up for MEFA emails. You can see all of the webinars, all of the events we have. So
great. Thank you, Julie. And I want to say thank you again. And thank you also again, Jonathan. Thank you to Tom Graf. Thank you to Senator Ed Markey and his staff, Lisa McClure, for joining us today. Thank you to Treasurer Goldberg. If you do, have any additional questions about baby steps, please don't hesitate to reach out to OEE. All of our contact information is on the screen above you. I know sometimes you watch these events and then you go, oh, I wish I asked that question. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We're really here to help you. Thank you again for joining us today, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Tuesday.